Let's just shift over a little bit. Yeah. All right, cool. We're rolling. There's a lot of conversation around growing restaurants. There's not a lot of conversation around the financial side of it and like what that costs. And so some of the people have been talking about like, hey, the costs of consistency, the costs of training employees and stuff like that. There's no right or wrong answer for you, but like when you think about growing your restaurants and you think about the kind of the financial investments you made, like what's those first couple of things that have been top of mind to you as saying, I'm going to do this, it's going to create success?
I think, a lot of prior to even like, site selection, you really have to make sure like that how you're going to build a restaurant, so if you're building a restaurant that requires eventhood, that's a considerable cost that what you have on your menu and like the equipment packages that requires, you have to set yourself up for success to where I think a lot of what's been said here at the conference is like there has to be like, a 25 to 30% cash on cash return, right? And so the way that you achieve that is either by one, doing tremendous revenue, or two, managing your costs. And I think the right answer is somewhere in the middle, which is that you have to make sure that whatever it is that you're trying to build is can be built sensibly, and then also that it can do it in the footprint that you need to be able to do the revenue that you need to do. So that's kind of like the way that we think of things is, all of our stores are like 1,400 square feet. So they're pretty efficient. And we've made the mistake before of like doing something like Event Hood Island as opposed to Event Hood off the wall, and just the immense cash that it required to do things that way, as opposed to, there's just little things like that I've learned along the way that these are the things that we consider when we're building a business.
Amazing. Cool. Yeah. You said something there, which was matching the venue with the menu. What does that mean to you?
I mean, I guess I just made that up. As you say it, I'm like, man, that sounds pretty cool. Matching the venue with the menu. I think, like just thinking out loud, what that would mean to me is that your menu dictates like the operational requirements that you have to have in order to execute it, right? So like if I'm doing, let's say, barbecue, or I'm doing a barbecue item on our menu, I have to take in consideration, like, am I going to smoke that myself? Because if I am, it's going to require a smoker. And what's the infrastructure that's required of that? If I'm not going to do that myself, where can I purchase that, either through a local purveyor, or am I buying it from a Cisco or Benny Keith? And if I'm doing that, is it even going to taste good enough to where, it's going to be worth it? I think also depending on where you are, like, if you're in Texas, you better have something that's like barbecue related. Whereas like if you're in New York, it may not make sense, And so I think that as you start to expand and you have different neighborhoods that have different palates and whatnot, that dictates a lot of what you're going to do with your space.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting, right? So if you are in Texas, you might want to actually incorporate like a mandatory that could be barbecue for you. New York might not necessarily be the case. And then going about picking the venues around it and how do you properly bring in the supply chain. I didn't really consider that from the financial implication of building something.
But again, I think that like when you think of the menu, it's like everything has to, like the menu, like if you want to have X on your menu, it's going to require you to have, Y and Z to be able to like execute it. So I think that that's like one thing that we try to do well is we try to keep a pretty concise menu with a limited amount of SKUs to where it doesn't require us to have multiple pieces of equipment specifically for like one item. Like I said, if I have one smoked item or one like barbecue item, it may not make sense for me to have an entire smoker that may cost, $30,000-$40,000, so.
Yeah, it's easy to get excited about a menu item.
Yeah, exactly.
maybe it's a little cost prohibitive.
Yeah, like a pizza oven. Like, you know, if you're gonna have a pizza on the menu or something, does it make sense to, you know, to build out this whole pizza oven for like this one item?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think a lot of the, especially as a growing brand, there's a lot of things that like, you just like a few things you got to focus on and get right. Obviously the guest experience and the quality of the food and all these things, but how do you know, there's obviously trade-offs. Some brands say they're going to focus on price and some brands are going to focus on a different part of the business. How do you think about that, especially with where you're at today? How do you think about like what you're going to focus on and like nail that down? And then some of the trade-offs you might have to make when you do that. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really hard to keep your blinders on and just focus on what you're good at, because there's all like the allure of the side quest is so, I mean, it's so easy to be like, oh, we could go do this, or people are asking about this, maybe we should do this. And being honest with who you are as a brand is difficult, but it's so important. So for us at Plomo, you know, what we do are notoriously delicious quesadillas. That's our bread and butter. Yeah. That's who we are. And we love doing that. There have been times where we've thought, okay, it would be really easy to take this same tortilla and instead of putting cheese on it and grilling it, we just roll it up into a burrito. Yeah. You know, there's times where, you know, we've thought, okay, you know, quesadillas at 2 a.m. sound really delicious. But maybe someone, you know, wants, you know, a bowl at 11 a.m. on a Monday or something. So we've thought, you know, okay, maybe we should do a bowl. And the thing that I've always tried to keep in my head is that our name is Plomo Quesadillas, and we just need to stick to what we're good at. And I think when you like, you know, when you are when you're something to a customer and you stay true to that, like that customer is always going to think of you whenever it comes to that specific thing. So, you know, with Plomo, we have a saying, all great nights end at Plomo. We want people that when they have a great night outside and they're, you know, coming back from the clubs or the bars or a concert or whatever, and they don't want the night to end and they want to go to that next spot, we want them to think of Plomo, and then we want them to think of our food. You know, we can't convince a customer to think like, oh, you know, Plomo, like that's the place to go get healthy. Like that conflicts with who we are as a brand. So I think really, you know, figuring out who you are and like sticking to that and just keeping your blinders on, that's what worked really well for us. I have no idea how some brands like, you know, Cheesecake Factory, how they have like, you know, 101 items.
180 SKUs.
Yeah. But at the same time, you know, like, in a way, like that's what we know. Like, you know, if we're all going to a restaurant, like if you're going to lunch with someone that you have no idea, like what they're, I made the mistake of like taking someone that was Jewish to a steakhouse and, you know, they're like, oh, you know, I can't eat any of this. And I had no idea, you know? So like if you have no idea what someone's dietary restriction or what their preferences are, then the first thing that comes to mind is Cheesecake Factory, because I know that they have everything. I just personally for us, like we don't want to be known for something like that. We want to be known for notoriously delicious quesadillas.
Yeah, and you almost want your brand to be associated with kind of like a simple, kind of like easy to remember thing, because when the consumer is making a choice of where to go, that's a split second decision for the most part. And so like, you know, you said Cheesecake Factory right away. That's the one that popped in my head as well, because it's like huge menu. Right away. So it's like they're known for that. That's their focus.
Has a table of contents.
So it's like that you need to be known for something and focus on that and be very, very good at that. And then you capture those people when they want that at that point in time. Makes perfect sense. Probably a good time to go into.
Well, I was actually going to hopefully ask you, we've gotten into the weeds on things. We've now talked a little bit about your you know, the brand and hopefully what you're building, but tell us a little bit about yourself, how it came to, you know, building Eat Plomo. And we've had people pull us over today and said, oh, you're going to be interviewing Omar. Tell him that I love the quesadillas.
Nice.
So that was pretty sweet.
Yeah. I did not pay them to do that. Well, so my personal story is, I went to school at the University of Arkansas. I never was planning on getting in the restaurant world. I thought that I was going to be a lawyer. Like that's what I wanted to do with my life. And my senior year, I had an opportunity to graduate a year early, and that came the acceleration of my honors thesis. And so I decided I was going to do business plan. And the most immediate option that I was like, what would I have fun like ideating on was a restaurant. I mean, I think that the weird thing about restaurants are like people will criticize the restaurant industry to being like, oh my gosh, it's such slim margins and like, oh, like it's so expensive and blah, blah, blah. Yet every single person at some point has been like, I could own a restaurant, you know? And so I never was planning on doing that. I just started working on this business plan, and more I fell in love with the project. And so I went on to open my first restaurant with a partner, Conquesos, and just kind of led me from one thing to another. The story of how I got to Plomo was that Conquesos was a taco restaurant. We had these kids quesadillas on the menu. But that was the top 5 selling item on our PMix. And I just remember like I would see these kids like order these quesadillas, like 2 or 3 at a time, these like small little quesadillas. They'd get some queso and they dip them and eat them. And I just thought, okay, there's something I can do with that. And so I had another juice bar at the time that we had a kitchen in the back that we weren't using because we have no formal cooking processes. Everything was raw at that restaurant. That I was like, okay, well, we have a kitchen that we're not utilizing. It's in an entertainment district. Let's sell quesadillas like late at night. And it was never meant to be anything successful. It was honestly like my goal is if I can make $1,000 profit a month, then that covers my mortgage. And like, that's just, one less thing I have to worry about. So I looked at it more like a food truck, and we opened up, we started selling like, 25 quesadillas a night. Then we started selling 50, and then 50 turned into 500. And, it really quickly accelerated into this thing that, it was unintentional, but it was very authentic. Our brand voice with Plomo is like a lot edgier than what you would typically see with a brand, but it really resonated with this college crowd. And it also played into like, it was very counterculture to the zeitgeist of cancel culture, where at the time, like, so many people were getting shamed and, trying to get canceled online. And, here was this brand that was like, someone would be like, they're offensive. And we'd be like, yeah, like F off, I remember like there was, a local news station that did an article on us, and like, I just remember like, they were like, oh, like they named their quesadillas after like notorious people like Pablo Escobar. And like, we're just like, writing back, like, with all the things going on in the world, like the most like exciting thing you could write about today was what we name our quesadillas. Like, sounds like you guys have a busy day at the office, and it's like, when you read that as a customer, I mean, some people look at that and they're like, oh my gosh, these people are annoying. They're probably never going to be our customer. But our customers that, go out, that live like life young and free, that have like, I think a more like liberal, not necessarily political, but they just like, they have a more like free lifestyle of like how they approach the world, that are happy-go-lucky. Like they see that and they're like, I resonate with that. It helps that we have really freaking awesome food. I think that's like I always say that's like the baseline. That's not a standard we hope to achieve. Like, we have great food, like that's like a necessity. Like it's like everything else that we do is the stuff that makes us different. And so now, like I said, we're at 3 locations. We just opened up Dallas in the end of 2023, and it feels like we have the opportunity to be able to grow across Texas.
That's awesome. It seems like something that was really key for you guys is isolating that ideal restaurant comer, like someone who's going to come into your restaurant. Right? You said it's this liberal, it's a free individual. And all right, that's who we want. It's not necessarily who we want at a restaurant, but that's who's coming to our restaurant, right? How does investing in that play a factor in the growth of your brand? Where are you trying to say, okay, we're going to optimize for the person who's coming in the door, or are we going to go market to everyone and hopefully you can start to pull from other audiences as well? Yeah,
I mean, I think the thing that I've always really latched onto is there's this book called like All Marketers Are Storytellers by Seth Godin. And one thing that he said in the book is like, it's better to be like, to be loved by 100 customers than to be liked by 1,000 customers. And so I really buy into that, which is that our goal with Plomo is not to be liked by everyone, because if that was our goal, then we would offer burritos and tacos and bowls, and, you know, we would do the whole gamut. Our goal is to serve like the most amazing quesadillas that anyone's ever had, to do it in our style, our voice. And if that resonates with you, then you're going to be our customer forever.
Yeah.
And so far that's proven to be successful, until we start to see a decline in sales, like where it's like, okay, this is like, we've gone Kanye, like we've gone a little too far, I think that, which I mean, even Kanye is like a perfect example of that, is like, as like crazy of things that he's done, like, there's still an audience out there that's listening to him, that they're just like, you know what, he makes great music, and so, for me, I think, let's be loved by the 100 people that love us, and the people that like us, like, you guys are welcome as well. And the people that don't like us, like, hey, yeah, like, well, it's like, if you guys don't like us, you don't have to support us, like, but we also don't have an obligation to entertain you either.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that a lot of people get wrong, is that they feel like if someone doesn't like them, that they're obliged to try to get them to like them.
Yeah.
And I think the approach that I have in life, and it translates to business, is that, if you like us, I'm going to try my best to get you to love us. Mm-hmm. If you don't like us, like, there's nothing that I can, anything that I say right now is not going to change your mind.
Yeah.
So why try to waste my energy on that? I'd rather spend my energy on the people that truly love us and like double down on them. And then, like I said, the people that like us, how do we get those people to love us?
Yeah. I can't even think of a brand that's like not worked out because they were hated so much. It's like most brands work out because people are indifferent. They don't even notice it. It kind of fades away.
Yeah.
And if you have immense hate, you probably have immense love on the other side of that thing. And that's a pretty good business. It's a huge market.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can't think of any brands. Well, I can't think of the brand, but I don't want to say it. But like, there's been brands that, like, you see them, something changes at some point and you're like, man, like, what happened? Like, I used to really, really enjoy the food or the atmosphere, and now it's like not cool anymore. Like, and I remember like those days, like, I think that is a testament to like brands like McDonald's, that it's like, as long as they've been around, they still figure out a way to like give you that feeling that you had when you were a kid, like that you have this nostalgia and everything. And I think that's something that is, it's the kiss of death to a brand that happens very slowly, which is like, someone comes in, they want to change something, or for whatever reason, they decide to change things. And it's like, it's the mistake that like every sports team that has ever lost like a major comeback, like, makes, which is like, you go from playing to win to playing not to lose. It's like, if you're doing X, Y, and Z and you're up like 20 points, like, for whatever reason, everyone decides like, okay, now we're going to like completely change the game plan and do whatever. And it allows the other team to get back in the game. So, that's something that we have to keep in mind, as we grow, is like, like we're, so this guy, I don't know if you guys know who Mike Posner is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So like, one of the things that he said in this interview that I thought was so powerful, like, whenever he was starting to build a name for himself, they were in New York, and his agent was like, hey, I'm going to like introduce you to this guy. Like, he's going to be able to get us on all the radio stations. And he was like, okay, well, what does he want to listen to? And this was like 2 years after Cooler Than Me had, I guess, officially been made. Yeah. And he was like, oh, we're going to like show him Cooler Than Me. And he's like, I don't, like, that's old. That's an old song. Like, like everyone's already heard that. It's played out. Yeah. And his agent stops him in the middle of like the street, and he's just like, listen to me. It's like, nobody has heard Cooler Than Me. It's not like, you're not that big, like, and lo and behold, he, goes and shows him on the radio, and then it like ends up taking off. But like, the moral of why I tell that story is like, sometimes you think like in your own little bubble that you're bigger than you are, and that like, you're like, I need to change things up and everything. And the reality is that most people, even when you're at 100 locations, have not heard of you. Yeah. And so like, just stay true to who you are. You don't have to diversify and do all these things, all you got to do is have a good product, like, and what people know you for, continue to do that. You know, sometimes business is difficult and complex. Sometimes business is really easy, you know, like, and we just make it really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The common theme that has come up with every person we've spoken to is they all immensely believe in consistency. Whether that is keeping the consistent brand mission, whether that is consistently innovating, whether that's consistently building in a direction that you know you need to head into and not kind of having the blinders on.
Yeah.
What does consistency mean for you?
Man, I think consistency is executing at the standard that you have over and over and over again. And, you know, giving the same experience that, you know, that a customer would expect from one day to another, from one location to another.
Yeah.
And again, you know, it's amazing how simple that sounds.
Yeah.
Simple, but not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that that's like one thing I try to hammer with our team is like, you know, there are times where, you know, one manager will decide to veer off the path for whatever reason and try to do things a certain way.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll have to remind them like, you know, hey, if our customer like shows up in the morning, in the evening, you know, they expect the food to taste exactly the same, to be plated exactly the same. You may think that you have, like a better way. And if it truly is better, let's explore that. But before we deploy that to the customer, we have to make sure that like we're all on board. Yeah. And if we're all on board, then we'll deploy it to all the restaurants because we want to make sure that the experience is consistent.
Yeah. We've spoken with brands as, you know, has 700 or 800 units and in between. It all comes down to like that guest experience, right? Like again, consumers are making choices within a few seconds. And it's like they could go to you one day and the next day they couldn't, and then forever they're gone. So that consistency in the store level, the customer level experience, you have to keep focus on that even when you're at 1,000 units. Yeah. On that note, like what is, you know, your plan for Plomo? Like next year, 5 years, 10 years, like where do you want to take the brand?
Man, I mean, I would love to take it to the moon, you know, but I think our next goal is how do we open a location in Fort Worth? That's like the next market that we're looking at. Yeah. And if that works out, like, you know, how do we do the next location? And, you know, I'm looking down the road as far as like what growth looks like. But I think that nothing else matters. Like the way I think of it is nothing else matters if we can't take that next step. Right. Yeah. So like as much as I'd love to say we want to be at the top of the staircase, you know, by the end of this, like it doesn't matter like about like the next 10 steps if you can't make the next single step. Yeah. So
brick by brick.
Yeah. So we have goals to, in a perfect world, I'd love to get to 10 locations. And then, you know, at that point, like, you know, find a growth partner to really, you know, go to the moon with it. But the reality is that we have to have this next location execute extremely well. Yeah. And then that will give us the opportunity to think about a fifth location. And then, you know, if those two go well, then that dictates where we go from here.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And we talked about it a lot where it's like maybe 4 to 5 doesn't sound like crazy, but that's 25% increase on your total.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of complexity there. How do you think about the financial side of things? Obviously it's capital intensive and a lot of options out there. How have you thought about that as you look at these locations?
Well, you know, one of the main reasons why I'm here at Create is because I want to look at our business from a financial side, from an investment side, and look at those KPIs that matter to someone that's interested in franchising, interested in investing in a business. Because regardless if you're interested in franchising, you know, for example, those metrics still dictate whether a business is a viable business or not. You know, I was talking with these guys that are real estate investors. You know, they're a REIT that they acquire land from operators as a way basically to unleash some equity to where if a business owns the land and the business, they can sell the land from underneath them, and that gives them more money to deploy into the operations. And the KPIs that they're looking at are any other KPI that, you know, it's like, is this a business that are they going to pay their rent? You know, are they a good business? And so, you know, from a financial aspect, we're starting to look a lot deeper. I mean, we've always looked at the operational KPIs, like our prime costs, you know, our occupancy costs, revenue, average ticket, things like that.
Yeah.
But we're starting to, at least for me, like I'm starting to try to expand my horizon, which is, you know, looking at something like cash on cash return, you know, looking at those KPIs so that way we can determine whether or not, like, where we are in terms of, like, are we like a home run location, or are we, you know, do we have some areas to improve upon? And then the areas that we do have to improve upon, like, you know, what do we need to start measuring so that way we can really improve that area of our business.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. It's kind of a tough balance between trying to, like, you know, have an ideal target cash on cash, but then also, like, that's a passive indicator, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into that.
Yeah.
And so you kind of balance those two things and where to make investments. And that's the challenging part of it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's a little bit of both, right? Like, you don't want to, you obviously can't build a business that it's like, hey, this makes sense on a, you know, QuickBooks, like Excel sheet.
You can't financially engineer a restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a little bit of, like, artistry that, you know, but at the end of the day, like, you know, a great business will inevitably have those financials. Like, you know, if you look at, like, an In-N-Out burger, it's really hard to, you know, to do $6 million in sales and not have a great cash on cash return, you know? So, like, there's a lot of those things that you can, so I think step one is, like, build a great business. In my opinion, I think that we've done that pretty well. Like, we've built something that is a great product. It's got a good branding to it. Operationally is simplistic, and we have a lot of our structure and everything. And so now, like, you know, this past year has been invest in people. So we offer a 401k now for our employees. We're going to start offering health insurance for our managers, and we're doing a lot to try to, like, train and develop our people a lot better than we have in the past. And then phase 3 of that is, okay, now, like, assuming that those first two things are correct, like, what do we need to tweak about, you know, financial metrics? Because, like I said, like, the decision that we made, for example, of building a store that required a kitchen island hood system as opposed to one that goes against the wall, you know, like, that right there is something that cost us like $60,000.
Yeah.
It's not to say that, you know, that's going to be the thing that's going to be the nail in the coffin. But when you're talking about financial KPIs, and the difference between, like, a very successful business and an okay business is, like, you know, 3 to 5% or whatever, like, those little details that you learn matter. So, I think that it's important to look at financial KPIs, but I think that you have to look at the operational side and the people side before you can even focus on the financial side.
Yeah, totally. Financials are probably several months delayed from anything operational.
Yeah.
Anything on the, you know, marketing and operations of the store, the food, all those things, you're not going to see that in financials for probably multiple months, but that, if you do cash, that's going to tell you a story, and you can be able to kind of make changes there.
And at the end of the day, sales cure all woes. You know, I mean, I've seen businesses that, like, are horribly ran, but it's like they just have an amazing product, and they just do so much volume that it's like, okay, it's like it's masking a lot of these issues. But, like, if you fix these things, I would rather be in that position. I'd rather be in a position where it's like we've done a good amount of revenue, like, people love us, and we just got to fix some things, than to be like, well, like, our metrics are really great. The only thing is, no one wants to, like, come to our business. So, like, you know, our fixed costs are really eating at our margins.
Amazing.
I think the hardest thing to solve is probably just getting people in your door, and like the sales component of it. That's, like, the hardest thing. You could work out everything else. Once you have that solved.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that that's something that I'm excited about as I start to talk to these different investors and people at this conference is, you know, how much of this are you guys looking at from, you know, a PE perspective, which is like, what are your financials? And then how much of it are you looking at from almost like an artistic side, which is that the brands that we've invested in, they all have these things, like, you know, about their product, you know, single product, that they do really well, like, you know, their branding and like their time of day, they really focused on X, Y, and Z, and you have that it factor. So I'm hoping that like people have great things to say about our business when they start like diving into it. But we'll see.
Amazing. Well, Omar, thank you so much for joining us today. We're trying to tell this or share the stories of lots of other restaurateurs and their journey growing their brand. Is there anyone else that you can think of that we should be speaking with?
Man, they're not at this conference, but the last event that I was at was the Fast Casual Executive Summit in Austin.
Yep.
Yeah, and I met the culinary director of Condado Tacos.
Yep.
Trey Santa Maria, and I've always looked at not to say that they're a bad business, but I've always looked at Velvet Taco as like this is a brand that I aspire to be.
Yeah.
And after meeting Trey and hearing about Condado, which I had no idea who they were, like they're not only, you know, larger in terms of unit count than Velvet, but they're doing some really interesting things. Like they have a whole concept. I mean, there's a lot that they do that, and they've got a really cool brand, and they're very, very sharp. So I think that I learned more on a bus ride with Trey than in like I did like the entire conference from everyone else. And so I think that those are some sharp guys that are doing it right that you're going to hear about in the future.
Amazing. Well, hey, thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.